started as any other evening, me lounging on the couch after work, scrolling through Reddit on my phone. Reddit had always been a source of entertainment and information for me, a place to unwind. The community, the memes, the random posts, it all felt normal, comforting even, until it didn't. I was browsing a subreddit dedicated to weird, unexplained occurrences, paranormal tales, odd glitches in the matrix, that sort of thing. Someone had shared a story about finding an old account of theirs on a forgotten platform, with posts they couldn't remember writing. It was creepy, but nothing more than an interesting read at the time. I laughed it off, closed Reddit, and decided to get some sleep. It wasn't until the next morning that things started to get weird. The next day, I was sitting at my desk, procrastinating as usual by scrolling through Reddit. I noticed a notification that I had been tagged in a post. That was strange. I didn't usually get tagged in anything. Curious, I opened the post and my blood ran cold. The post was from my account, the username, the profile picture, all identical to mine. But I hadn't written it. It was a bizarre thread titled, "Anyone else ever felt like they've been in two places at once?" The post went on to describe how the user me had experienced strange gaps in memory and a sense of watching themselves from outside their body. I sat there staring at the screen, my heart pounding in my chest. I hadn't made that post. I hadn't even thought about anything remotely like that. I scrolled through the comments, feeling like I was slipping into some surreal nightmare. People were responding, sharing their own strange experiences, and I had no memory of engaging with any of them. Had I somehow been hacked? Was someone messing with me? I quickly changed my password, deleted the post, and chalked it up to some bizarre Reddit glitch, or maybe even a prank. But the feeling of unease didn't leave me. If anything, it lingered. The next few days passed uneventfully. No more strange posts, no weird notifications, just the normal flow of internet life. I was starting to relax, thinking it had just been some freak incident. Until it happened again. I was at work, killing time on my lunch break, when I opened Reddit to check my notifications. And there it was. Another post from my account, this one even more unsettling than the last. It reads, "Sometimes I feel like I'm not alone in my own home. Does anyone else ever feel like they're being watched?" The post was time-stamped an hour earlier, while I had been in a meeting. There was no way I could have written it. This time there were no easy answers. No random hacker would post something like that, something so personal and unnerving. The posts kept coming, all from my account. Comments under other threads, replies to random users, all in my voice but with a tone that felt off, like a distorted version of my thoughts. I'd delete the posts as soon as I saw them, but they always came back. That was when I realized whoever or whatever was using my account knew me. It wasn't just random content, it was personal, eerie reflections of my life. It felt like my thoughts, my worries were being twisted and projected online. I wasn't just being hacked, I was being mimicked. One night, unable to shake the feeling of unease, I was lying in bed staring at the ceiling. My phone buzzed on the nightstand. I picked it up, expecting a notification from some random app. But no, it was Reddit again. This time the message was different. It was a direct message from my own account. "You can't hide from yourself." I sat up, cold sweat covering my skin. My fingers trembled as I opened the message. It had been sent at 2:47 a.m., right as I had drifted off to sleep. My own username, my own account, but I didn't send it. Whoever or whatever was behind this was getting bolder. It was no longer just posting in public threads. Now it was speaking directly to me. I started to panic. Was this some sort of elaborate prank? Was I losing my mind? I tried deleting the message, but every time I closed the app, it reappeared. Over and over again, no matter what I did, that same phrase appeared on my screen. "You can't hide from yourself." The next day, I decided to stop using Reddit. I logged out, thinking that if I didn't interact with it, whatever was happening would stop. But even after logging out, I still couldn't escape it. Every time I looked at my phone, I felt like the phantom version of myself was watching. Like my account was still alive, still active without me. I deleted the Reddit app entirely, but that night as I was brushing my teeth, something caught my eye in the mirror. It wasn't a reflection, not exactly. It was me, but not me. It was like looking at a version of myself that didn't belong, like someone had slipped into my skin and was wearing it wrong. My reflection's lips curled into a smile, but I wasn't smiling. The person in the mirror looked at me with knowing eyes, as if to say, "You thought you could hide." I dropped my toothbrush, stumbling back, my heart pounding. I refused to look at the mirror again, afraid of what I might see. I didn't touch Reddit for days. I even tried creating a new account, hoping to escape whatever had latched onto me. But no matter what I did, my old account was still there, still posting. Until one day, it just stopped. The phantom posts ceased, the messages disappeared, and my old account went silent. I had no explanation, no understanding of what had happened, but the silence was deafening, like whatever had been haunting me had finally gotten bored and left. Even now, as I scroll through Reddit under a new username, I can't help but check my old account sometimes. It's still there, inactive, a ghost in the system. But deep down, I know it's not really gone. It's just waiting for me to look again. It all began with a late-night scroll on Reddit. It wasn't out of the ordinary. I often lost hours bouncing between different subreddits, immersing myself in random threads to pass the time. But that night, I stumbled upon something that would change everything, a thread that seemed to know my life better than I did. I wasn't searching for anything specific, just clicking through posts, reading random comments. That's when I saw a thread titled, "Things You Can't Escape." Intrigued, I clicked. The user who posted it had no profile picture, no karma, no activity, just this one post. That wasn't the weird part, though. The post began with a line that sent a shiver down my spine. It all started with a knock at the door late at night. I immediately froze, my finger hovering above the screen. Just the night before, I had heard a knock at my door around 11:30 p.m. I hadn't thought much of it at the time. I assumed it was a neighbor or some prank. But seeing it written out in this cryptic thread, it unsettled me. I kept reading. The knock came once, twice, but no one was there. After that, things changed. My breath caught in my throat. That was exactly what had happened to me. I had opened the door after the second knock, expecting to see someone, but no one had been there. The air outside had felt unnaturally still, almost heavy, as though I had disturbed something by opening the door. But now, reading this post, it felt like more than just a coincidence. I continued scrolling, feeling my pulse quicken. The thread went on to describe small, eerie occurrences. Lights flickering, objects moving just slightly from where they had been placed, a creeping sense of being watched. All things I had experienced over the past few days. I hadn't thought much of them at the time. The flickering lights, faulty wiring. The moved objects, probably just me being forgetful. But the sense of being watched? That was harder to explain away. The poster wrote about this vague, ever-present feeling of unease, as though something or someone was always there, just out of sight. They described hearing soft footsteps at night, catching glimpses of shadows that shouldn't be there. You try to ignore it at first, the post read, but soon it's all you can think about. And that's when it gets worse. I stared at the screen, my hands trembling. I felt like I had fallen into some bizarre alternate reality where my life was being narrated by a stranger on the internet. That each sentence described exactly what I had been feeling, the same eerie incidents that had plagued me for days. I scrolled to the bottom of the post, my heart hammering in my chest. The next knock won't be from your door, it ended, but from inside. I didn't sleep that night. I sat up in bed, every creak of the house making me jump. My mind raced, trying to rationalize what I had just read. Maybe it was all a coincidence. Maybe I had stumbled onto the thread at the wrong time, and my brain was playing tricks on me, weaving connections where none existed. But no matter how much I tried to convince myself, I couldn't shake the feeling that something was horribly wrong. The following day at work, I couldn't focus. The thread replayed in my mind over and over. I decided to check Reddit again during my lunch break, hoping that some explanation would have emerged in the comments. But when I tried to find the post, it was gone. I scrolled through my history, but there was no trace of it. It was like it had vanished. Frustrated, I searched the title "Things You Can't Escape," but nothing came up. I even went so far as to Google it. Still, no results. That was when the knock came. I was alone in the break room, the rest of my coworkers either in meetings or at their desks. The knock was soft, barely audible, but unmistakable. It sounded like it came from the corner of the room, where there was nothing but a bare wall. I stood frozen, my eyes darting around, looking for any explanation. The thread's final words echoed in my mind. The next knock won't be from your door, but from inside. I grabbed my things and left the office early, unable to stay in that space a second longer. My heart pounded in my chest the entire drive home, every shadow outside my car window seeming to stretch toward me. By the time I got home, I was determined to make sense of what was happening. I logged back into Reddit, hoping that maybe the post had reappeared. But when I opened my account, I was greeted with a message. Not a normal notification, but a direct message from an anonymous user. The message was simple: "You found it. Now it knows." I stared at the screen, my skin crawling. What did that even mean? What had I found? And what was it? Suddenly, the lights in my apartment flickered. The same way they had over the past few days. Only this time they didn't come back on. I sat in the dark, my mind spinning, when I heard it. A soft knock. But not at the door. This knock was coming from within the walls, a muffled, rhythmic sound like something was tapping, waiting. I stood up, my body tense, and the knocking continued. It was deliberate, as though it knew I was listening. My heart raced, my breath quickened, and I took a step back, toward the door. And then, just as quickly as it had begun, it stopped. He stood frozen, unsure of what to do. The silence that followed was deafening, the air thick with tension. And then I heard the faintest whisper, almost imperceptible, like it was coming from within my own head. "You can't escape it." I left my apartment that night, unable to stay. I checked into a hotel, desperately trying to distance myself from whatever was happening. But no matter where I went, the feeling followed, the sense that something was watching, waiting. I stopped going on Reddit, convinced that whatever had happened had been triggered by that thread. But deep down, I knew the truth. It wasn't about Reddit. It wasn't even about the thread. It was about me. Something had attached itself to me, something that knew my every move, my every thought. I didn't sleep for days, jumping at every small noise, every shadow. I couldn't stay in one place too long, fearing that the knocking would start again. I felt like I was unraveling, my life falling apart piece by piece. Until one day, just as suddenly as it had started, it stopped. The lights in my apartment stayed on. The knocking ceased. The feeling of being watched lifted, like a weight had been removed from my chest. But I never found the thread again. It was as though it had never existed, a ghost in the system. And even though the events stopped, the words of that message still haunt me. "You found it. Now it knows." It was a regular evening, just me scrolling through Reddit, hopping from one subreddit to another like I usually do. I was browsing some threads in _the_ matrix, a place where people shared stories about strange events or coincidences they couldn't explain. I liked the sub. Most of the posts were fun to read, and some of them even gave me chills. Then, as I was scrolling, a notification popped up. It wasn't the usual kind, though. It said, "You have one unread message from a post you made 5 years ago." That didn't make sense. I hadn't been on Reddit for that long, 3 years, max. Puzzled, I clicked on the notification, which led me to an old post I apparently had written, titled, "I saw it happen before it happened." The post was dated 5 years back. I read the first few lines and my heart skipped a beat. It was my account, my username, but I had no memory of ever writing it. The post described a series of events that were eerily familiar, things I hadn't even experienced until this year. I couldn't look away from the screen as I started reading the post. I saw it in my dream first, a man in a dark coat standing across the street. He was always there staring, never coming closer, but I knew something wasn't right. It felt like he was waiting for something. The next day I saw him in real life, in the exact same spot. My hands started trembling as I read those words. Just last week, I had noticed a man in a dark coat standing across the street from my apartment. I hadn't thought much of it, chalking it up to coincidence. But now seeing it written in a post from 5 years ago, a post I didn't remember making, it felt like I was reading a script of my own life. I had dreamt about him the night before, just like it said in the post. The next paragraph chilled me even more. Things started happening after that. It wasn't just the man. I started noticing other things. My lights flickered for no reason. I'd hear footsteps at night, but no one was there. The dreams kept getting worse. My breath caught in my throat. Over the past few days, my apartment's lights had been flickering randomly. I'd even mentioned it to a friend, thinking it was an electrical issue. But reading this, it felt like I was walking through the exact same steps someone had mapped out years ago, steps I didn't remember writing. I scrolled to the bottom of the post, desperate to know how it ended. The final lines left me frozen. The man in the coat will knock on your door tonight. Whatever you do, don't open it. I leaned back in my chair, trying to make sense of what I had just read. How could this be happening? I'd never written anything like that, I was sure of it. But there it was, sitting on Reddit for 5 years, attached to my account. It felt like I was living out some twisted premonition. I tried to rationalize it. Maybe someone had hacked my account years ago and made the post. But why would they write something so strange? And why did it describe exactly what was happening to me now? I shook my head, trying to push the thoughts away. It was too weird to process, too surreal. I decided to ignore it, to pretend it was just a strange coincidence. Maybe I was overreacting. Maybe my mind was playing tricks on me. But as the evening wore on, I couldn't shake the feeling that I was being watched. Every time I glanced out the window, I half expected to see the man in the dark coat standing there again. I checked the locks on my door, reassured myself that it was just paranoia. Then, at 11:47 p.m., there was a knock at the door. I froze. It was soft at first, barely audible, like someone was gently tapping the wood. My heart pounded in my chest, and I immediately thought of the post. The words echoed in my mind, "The man in the coat will knock on your door tonight. Whatever you do, don't open it." I stood up from my chair, moving cautiously toward the door, my pulse quickening with every step. Another knock, louder this time. I glanced through the peephole, but all I could see was darkness. No man, no shadow, just the empty hallway. He stood there, paralyzed, my hand hovering over the doorknob. I wasn't the type to get scared easily, but this was different. It was as if the post had come to life. I couldn't shake the sense that something was wrong, that I was stepping into a trap. "Don't open it." The words repeated in my head, but I needed to know. I needed to see if it was real, or if my mind was playing tricks on me. Slowly I unlocked the door, and with a deep breath I pulled it open. No one was there. The hallway was empty, just as it had been through the peephole. For a moment I felt a wave of relief wash over me. Maybe I had imagined the knock. Maybe the post was just some weird coincidence after all. I was about to close the door when something caught my eye. On the floor, right outside my door, was a small piece of paper. I bent down, my heart racing again, and picked it up. There were just 4 words written on it in messy, uneven handwriting. "You shouldn't have opened." He dropped the paper as if it had burned me, slamming the door shut behind me. I locked it, deadbolt and chain, my hands trembling. I backed away from the door, trying to calm my racing thoughts. It had to be a prank. Someone was messing with me, they had to be. But who? And how could they know about the post? None of it made sense. I retreated to my bedroom, locking the door behind me. I climbed into bed, pulling the covers up to my chest, trying to block out the fear that gnawed at me. But sleep wouldn't come. I kept glancing at the door, expecting another knock, another message. The next morning, I woke to the sound of my phone buzzing on the nightstand. I grabbed it bleary-eyed and unlocked it to find a Reddit notification. Another post from my account. I stared at the screen, heart pounding as I opened the post. The title was simple: "It ends tonight." The post was short, just one sentence: "The man in the coat is coming for you." I dropped the phone and backed away, fear creeping up my spine. I didn't know what to do, who to turn to. I wanted to delete my account, throw my phone across the room, but none of that would stop whatever was happening. I stayed locked inside my apartment all day, too afraid to leave, waiting for something to happen. But as night fell, there were no more knocks, no shadows in the hallway, just an overwhelming silence that hung heavy in the air. And yet, I knew it wasn't over. The post had said it ends tonight. I'm still waiting, but I know deep down that whatever's coming won't be stopped by locked doors or closed windows. It's only a matter of time. If you want to see more horror stories, please like the video, share your thoughts, and subscribe to our channel. Stay with us, thank you, and see you in the next videos.